יעיפו אותנו.
She's been looking for an insight in that data forever. Oh.
Hi.
I'm gonna find it.
Did you tell her about Sassfire?
No, I thought you did.
I'm gonna tell her.
Oh, no.
The quickest way from a billion points of data to a point of view. Sassfire.
יעיפו אותנו. יעיפו אותנו.
איזה ערוץ אתם?
אנחנו נותנים לכל
איזה ערוץ אתם?
אנחנו נותנים לכל
חמש, ארבע, שתיים, אחד, מעולה. 5, 4, 2, 1, מעולה.
Want to know what's really happening on your site? Meet Hotjar. It lets you watch recordings of real user sessions, see where people click and scroll, and ask what they think and feel.
They attacked by
so join
air,
over a
land,
million
and
sites already getting results. With Hotjar, better insights for better websites.
This is our rolling coverage of the war going on between Israel and Hamas. We will be bringing you the latest at every hour. And right now, we've just learned that the death toll in Israel has passed 400 and more than 2,000 have been left injured. This is according to local media reports. Meanwhile, 313 Palestinian people have lost their lives. Reports also suggest that the Israeli army have mobilized dozens of tanks to southern Israel. Fierce battles have been going on in the region where Hamas fighters infiltrated Israel. News is coming from the Arab world as the Israel-Palestine war continues to escalate. Now the Arab League chief is headed to Moscow to hold talks with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Now, according to a spokesperson for the League of Arab States, Ahmed Abul-Gheit, who is also a former foreign minister of Egypt, will be discussing the rising conflict in the Gaza Strip with the Russian foreign minister. Now, shortly after Hamas group's coordinated attack on Israel, Russia called for an immediate end to the violence and urged both sides to, quote-unquote, exercise restraint. Now, the Arab League chief's visit comes just a day after the Hamas group launched a surprise attack across 22 different locations in Israel. Israeli Defense Forces shortly responded to the attack, carrying out an air raid on the Gaza Strip. On Saturday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that Israel is now in a state of war. So far, at least 100 Israelis have been killed in the conflict. On the other hand, 313 people have died in Gaza.
Today I'm here to talk about the main features of the static cables. I'm going to explain to you how to get the most out of our revolutionary charging cables.
So, let's dive into it. All cords work with 3 magnetic tips.
All right, to discuss this further, we are now being joined by Sergei Sumleny. He's a defense expert and director, European Resilience Initiative Center. He's joining us live from Berlin. Welcome to the broadcast, sir.
Thank you for having invited me today.
Mr. Sumleny, let's start off right here. Now, the war is, of course, raging on. The Arab League can play a very important role in bringing some kind of resolution here. But the Arab League chief currently is headed to Moscow to hold talks with the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov. Talk to us about the role the Arab League can take in ending this conflict at the moment.
Well, that is, of course, an interesting development and not what has been like a surprise. Moscow constantly presents itself as a mediator in the region, and it is obviously that, especially now, Moscow needs to find like some open door to get important for the West. That's why many people believe that this war, which has started, was at least like green lighted by Moscow, or Moscow could also have provided Hamas with weapons, etc., exactly to have this development, than to present itself as a mediator in exchange for some Western benefits in Ukraine. As Moscow needs, of course, that the Western support for Ukraine would get like lower, will get like not that intense, that Moscow get maybe some sanctions get lifted, etc. So Moscow needs to come back to the stage. And regarding the Arab League, of course they have the influence in the Gaza Strip. Of course that is happening, but don't forget that the main sponsor of Hamas are not like Arab states. It is Iran, and we know that the only Arab states which has land border to Gaza Strip, Egypt, is very reluctant in this case and doesn't let the Palestinians from the Gaza Strip to come to Egypt. Of course, they tolerate some sort of tunnels and some sort of smuggling of weapons, but they try to keep a bit like away from Gaza. So it's Iran, not Arab state, which is supporting Hamas. And Moscow, once again, tries to play a mediator. We'll have a look like if Moscow will be successful on this field.
Mr. Sumleny, now Russia, the statement that came was that it's asking both sides to exercise restraint. Now, it's interesting that the Arab chief travels to Moscow to find a solution in the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas, or whichever way you'd like to see it, between Israel and Palestine at the moment. Now, why is a meeting with the Russian foreign minister so imminent at this time? You've linked Russia behind the current, ammo that Hamas has, but what role can Russia play over here in mediating?
Well, Russia is a long-term donor and supporter of Hamas. We know that Hamas was created with a significant support from Moscow. Moscow coordinated the Palestine anti-Israel movement since decades, since the Soviet Union time. During the last year and this year, Hamas leaders visited Moscow 3 times, 2 times in 2002, once in 2003, coordinated their efforts. The leader of Hamas met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. And even in their public statements, they discussed the need for reshaping the world order, as they named it. And of course, Moscow is trying to present itself as some sort of anti-colonial actor which supports what they call like liberation fight. But we know that in the core, Russia is an utterly colonial power. Russia is running now its colonial war against Ukraine. And that is exactly the problem for Moscow. Moscow needs more freedom of movement in Ukraine because Moscow is stuck there. And for that, Moscow needs to be important once again for the West. Moscow needs to be seen as a negotiation partner. Moscow needs to restore its image in the eyes of China, a very important ally of Moscow. Moscow needs to present to the world, we are strong, we have influence, we can invest into solving of conflicts no one can solve except of us. That is why for Moscow, of course, this war is some sort of as an El Dorado, as a gold mine, because they can say, look, you need us once again. You cannot isolate us. You cannot push us from the international diplomacy. We are in play again. That is, I think, is a long-term strategy of Moscow. Create a problem and then offer themselves as mediators and as those who can solve it.
It's an interesting take you've given there to the entire involvement of the Russian foreign minister and the meeting between the Arab chief. Now, sir, today morning, Berlin tightened police protection of Jewish and Israeli institutions. Now, this was a reaction to some supporters of Palestinians taking the streets. How do you see this war panning out for Europe on large?
Well, we have indeed seen in Berlin this night some spontaneous gatherings by people who supported Hamas. They were waving flags, they were chanting anti-Israeli slogans, they were clearly celebrating these attacks. Like many of them are of Middle East heritage, people who feel connected to the conflict on Hamas side. The police has disbanded these meetings. No one was arrested, as far as I understand, but the police has recorded the events, and maybe some of these people will get some trials against them. As in Germany, we have ban on what is called public supporting of violence, and police believes that some chanting were the supporting of violence, but we still have this division in Germany, and it is what is seen on the streets. Like the Jewish community of Berlin urged its members to stay at home for these days, or at least not wearing visibly things which can identify them as Jews, for example, kippah, or like some symbols like Israeli flags or pins. And we know that this happens sometimes in Berlin. Like sometimes people, especially when there is a conflict, the next conflict wave in the Middle East, then people can get attacked on the streets in Berlin as they have been identified as Jews. But that is unfortunately a pretty typical situation. Like every synagogue in Germany is constantly under police protection, not because only of the people who can attack them out of Middle East related anti-Semitism, but also by German far right, by German neo-Nazis. The last violent attack on a synagogue in Germany took 3 years ago, I think, in eastern German city of Halle, when far right neo-Nazis of German heritage.
اسرائیل همراه ماست. بابک از آخرین خبرها به ما بگو.
داستان آنچه که در 24 ساعت گذشته در سدروت و در جنوب اسرائیل گذشت را در اینجا میتوانیم قشنگ بیان کنیم. منم اکنون در کنار ایستگاه پلیسی هستم که درگیری‌های شدیدی در اون در 24 ساعت گذشته رخ داده و بیش از 22 پلیس در اینجا به دست مأموران حماس کشته شدند. اگر در اینجا را بتونیم نشون بدیم، ما ماشین هایی را میبینیم که کاملا از بین رفتن، خون هایی که بر روی زمین هنوز جای اونها به خوبی نشان داده میشه. اگر بتونیم کمی جلوتر بریم و ببینیم محل این واقعه را، اتومبیلی که واژگون شده و در اینجا به خوبی میتوانیم گلوله هایی را که شلیک شده را ببینیم. ما اگر بتونیم گلوله ها را نشون بدیم میتونیم ببینیم که درگیری هایی که در اینجا به وجود اومده، افراد حماس پس از ورود به شهر سدروت به خانه های شهروندان اینجا یکی وارد شدند و بسیاری از اونها را کشتند و بسیاری از اونها را هم به گروگان گرفتند. ما میتونیم در اینجا ببینیم ماشین پلیسی را که گلوله باران شده و اگر بتونیم ما ایستگاه پلیس را ببینیم، بیش از 10 ساعت در این ایستگاه پلیس بیش از 10 فرد مسلح فلسطینی در حالی که چند پلیس را نیز به گروگان گرفته بودند، در اینجا به تبادل آتش با ارتش اسرائیل پرداختند و پس از اینکه ارتش نتونست هیچ کدام از افراد پلیس را در اونجا نجات بده و همه را اونها کشتند، مجبور شد با بولدوزر به ساختمان اینجا را کاملا ویران بکنه. اما همانطوری که گفتم درگیری ها همچنان در اسرائیل، در سدرات و در بیشتری به بسیاری از مناطق دیگر جنوب اسرائیل هنوز ادامه داره. هرچند گاهی خبری میشنویم که چند فرد مسلح فلسطینی که از دیروز وارد اسرائیل شدن در گوشه دیگر از جنوب اسرائیل دست به تیراندازی میزنن. حتی گفته شد که یکی از اونها آمبولانسی رو بوده. در جای دیگر چند نفر را در خانه ای به گروگان گرفتن. اینجا در شهر سدرات کاملا شهر در دست ارتش هستش، شهری که بسیاری از قربانیان این واقعه در اینجا اتفاق افتاد الان تقریبا خالی از سکنه هستش و هنوز درگیری ها در گوشه و کنار این شهر ادامه داره. موشک هایی که از بالای سر ما هم رد میشه، همچنان صدای اون را میتونیم به خوبی به گوش بشنویم و همچنین جنگنده های اسرائیلی که به سوی نوار غزه میرن و اونجا را بمباران میکنن. صدای انفجارهای مهیبی از درون غزه میتوانیم الان بشنویم. همانطوری که گفتیم درگیری ها به شدت و در داخل اسرائیل و همچنین در نوار غزه ادامه داره و باید دید که آیا ارتش اسرائیل وارد خاک غزه خواهد شد یا خیر. این سوالی هستش که در حال حاضر بزرگترین وقایع در اسرائیل میتونه رقم بزنه.
متشکرم از توضیحاتت. بابک اسحاقی از اسرائیل همراهمون بودیم.
بابک اسحاقی همکارم.
This is Bill, small business owner. He's freaking out because he needs to manage cash flow while preparing an order for 72 boxes of Lamingtons.
Oh, relax. We use Reckon, remember?
Reckon? Luckily, Reckon Accounting is made for every small business. Reckon, all for small.
منم اکنون در چند کیلومتری نوار غزه هستم، جایی که نبردهای سنگین بین ارتش اسرائیل و مسلحین در داخل غزه ادامه داره. در پشت سر من، در پشت اون درختها غزه وجود داره و دقیقه‌ای نیست که هواپیماهای اسرائیلی به اونجا نیان و اونجا رو بمباران نکنن. دیروز یکی از افسران ارتش اسرائیل گفته بود که دروازه‌های جهنم بر روی غزه باز شده بود. ما از اینجا آن لرزه‌ها و انفجارات عظیمی را که به دنبال پرواز هواپیماها و حملات هواپیماهای جنگی اسرائیل گوش میدیم به وضوح میبینیم که چه در داخل غزه میگذرد. در این سو هم ما میبینیم که جاده های ورودی به نزدیک نوار غزه را پلیس اسرائیل کاملا بسته. ساعاتی پیش یک اتومبیلی که چند تن از افراد مسلح حماس که هنوز در اسرائیل هستند دزدیدن، از اینجا به سوی شمال حرکت کردند و اما پلیس اسرائیل و ارتش اسرائیل اونها را دنبال کردند و گفته شد که اونها را پس از اینکه تعقیب و گریز اونها را کشتن. در حال حاضر همانطوری که گفتید شمار باور نکردنی از کشته ها در اسرائیل اعلام شد. همانطوری که گفتیم دقایقی پیش گفته شد که 600 اسرائیلی در حمله دیروز افراد مسلح حماس به اسرائیل کشته شدند. بیشترین تعداد کشته ها از جشنی هستش که در بیابان‌های اطراف نوار غزه نوجوانان و جوانان اسرائیلی در اون شرکت کرده بودند و افراد مسلحی که وارد خاک اسرائیل شدند به اولین چیزی که برخورد کردن این جوانان و نوجوانان بودند و آنچه که کسانی که در اینجا بودند تعریف میکنن و نجات پیدا میکنن فقط واژه قتل عام هستش. اونها بدون اینکه بدونن کی و چه همه را به گلوله میبندن. بسیاری از اونها را هم گروگان میگیرن و با خودشون به داخل نوار غزه میبرن و در حال حاضر گفته شده که هنوز چندین نفر از افراد مسلحی که دیروز وارد اسرائیل شدن هنوز در چند تا از آبادی‌های یهودی نشین حضور دارند و به تبادل آتش با ارتش اسرائیل میپردازند. دو نکته مهم دیگر را هم باید بگم. یکی حمله تروریستی در داخل الکساندر در مصر. 2 توریست اسرائیلی توسط یک پلیس مصری مورد اصابت گلوله قرار گرفتن و کشته شدند. و پس از اون باید برسیم به لبنان. امروز از سوی لبنان هم مرز لبنان چند خمپاره به سوی اسرائیل پرتاب شد. اسرائیل بلافاصله مواضعی را در داخل خاک لبنان بمباران کرد. یکی از این مواضع چادری بود که در داخل خاک اسرائیل حزب الله بنا کرده بود و مورد مناقشه بود و اسرائیل اون را کاملا نابود کرد. در حال حاضر هم خبرهایی از این که به گونه‌ای تبادل آتش در شمال اسرائیل ادامه داره به گوش میرسه. بسیاری از سربازان ذخیره اسرائیل امروز به سوی مرز لبنان رفتن و احتمال اینکه در اونجا هم جبهه‌ای تازه باز بشه بسیار وجود داره. همچنان تنش‌ها در اسرائیل ادامه داره و به نظر میاد که آغاز جنگی گسترده در اسرائیل رقم خورده.
متشکرم ازت بابک. حتما تازه ترین ها رو در ساعت پیش رو با تو دنبال خواهیم کرد. بابک اسحاقی همکارم از
What's my type of man? A manscaped one.
Of war after a massive surprise attack by Palestinian militant Islamist group Hamas, which is regarded as a terrorist organization by Israel, Germany, the EU, and others. Israel says the attacks have left at least 600 people dead. Reprisal airstrikes on Gaza City have killed hundreds, and fighting is threatening to escalate further, with Lebanon's Hezbollah shelling Israeli positions in disputed territory along the country's border. Israel is firing back. The full scale of Hamas's attack is beginning to emerge.
This is what Israel's nightmare looks like. A police station inside Israel overrun by Hamas militants. Israeli forces managed to end this standoff. But it's a security breach that would have been unthinkable even a few days ago. And it gets worse. This woman, said to be an Israeli soldier, is just one of dozens of hostages seized by the militants after they infiltrated Israel as part of their multi-pronged assault on the country. For this, Israel is vowing retribution.
The atrocious act of Hamas is a war crime. For the enemy to hold women and children is contrary to international law, it's contrary to Islam, and anyone who participates in this will be held accountable.
Israel's response has been swift. It has carried out airstrikes on Gaza, and they say this is only the start of what will be, quote, a long and difficult war. Many in Gaza say the assault by militant Islamist Hamas was launched because of anger at Israel's occupation of Palestinian territory and Israel's failure to rein in illegal Israeli settlements. Some people say they have now lost everything.
What happened to us is complete destruction. We are the Al-Bawab family, and there were 150 people in this building, including my uncle's family, my sisters, the families of my 5 brothers. Their houses were also all destroyed.
Hamas continued firing rockets overnight, targeting civilians and hospitals. Israel too stepped up its attacks from the air. But in what some fear could herald a dangerous escalation, Israel responded to fire from the militant group Hezbollah in Lebanon after they launched guided missiles at a disputed area. Israel is now beefing up its security presence there too.
Israel's security cabinet has officially declared a state of war following the attacks by the Palestinian militant group Hamas. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office says this would allow for, quote, far-reaching military steps. I asked Major Libby Weiss, a spokesperson for the Israeli military, what that declaration means in practical terms.
Well, I think we understand the severity of what has happened in the last nearly 36 hours. And really for the IDF, the focus has been and continues to be really securing the communities along the southern border with the Gaza Strip, evacuating civilians away from those areas of danger, and then really striking a blow to Hamas's operational capabilities. So the focus for us has really remained at that level for the last 30 plus hours. And of course, this has truly been a tragedy of national proportions and a massacre of which we've never seen in Israel's history.
Tell us, what is the situation right now in southern Israel? Have all of the Hamas incursions been stopped?
No, there are still several communities along the border with Gaza where we understand that there's current fighting that is taking place. We understand that there are civilians as well being held as hostages in certain communities as well. So the IDF has been working very, very hard, continues to do that. And of course, understandably, really that is the main priority at this stage. But the fighting is ongoing now as we speak.
A dynamic situation indeed. How many Israelis at this point have been killed and injured?
I mean, it's a tragedy. The number keeps increasing really almost every minute. At this stage, we're speaking north of 500 casualties, thousands of injuries. Some of these are, of course, extremely serious injuries, which might result at the end in deaths as well. We have dozens of civilians who were taken as hostages, dragged across the border. And of course, the images that the world has been seeing are truly haunting of civilians killed in their homes, on the streets, women, children, the elderly, dragged across the border. It's truly a crisis in terms of the impact on the Israeli population.
As you well know, the IDF has said Hamas has abducted a, quote, substantial number of Israeli civilians and soldiers. Can you give us any more detailed numbers?
Unfortunately, I can't at this stage. What we can say is that we know that we're talking here around dozens. And of course, it's a very dynamic situation, and we're now assessing all of the information that we have as we get it.
The Israeli Air Force has already been striking targets in Gaza. Is the Army preparing a ground incursion?
This $36 gadget cleans any home in 20 minutes. It's a new hand.
Focus really is on securing the border communities and then, of course, making sure that Hamas will never have the capability to do this again. So there are all options really are on the table. It will be decisions, moving forward made by the government and made by the cabinet. But our focus, as mentioned, is securing the population, really making sure that Hamas can never do this again. And of course, all of those options are available. All options on the table includes, in fact, a ground incursion. So in the past, the IDF has made it very clear you try to minimize civilian casualties. But we're talking about one of the world's most densely populated areas. You can't really always distinguish between militants and innocent civilians, can you? I've been on this program many times where we've talked about the measures that are taken, the professionalism that guides the IDF in a highly complicated urban warfare scenario. Those professional guidelines haven't changed. Our commitment to following international law haven't changed. But of course, what is going to happen in Gaza sits at the feet of Hamas. Hamas invaded Israel. We have all seen these horrific images of the death, the destruction, the slaughter, essentially, of civilians within Israel, hostages taken, dragged across, war crimes without any question committed here. So we will, of course, continue to operate at the professionalism that we always have. And it's important to note that what happens and what will happen in Gaza is meant to target Hamas, and what happens is at their feet without any question. Major, you mentioned the fact that there are guidelines and that you've been on this show before, but for the many viewers who may not have happened to catch them, just give me one or two guidelines that ensures that, in fact, you can distinguish between militants and civilians. Well, I should say that in stark contrast to what we've been seeing in the last 30 hours, the IDF never targets civilians. Civilians are never the targets of any of our operations. We are looking to target Hamas and Hamas only. It's something that we have done in the past, despite Hamas's constant use of civilians within the Gaza Strip to shield their activity. And of course, we will continue to operate at the professionalism that we have in the past in an extremely complex situation. Major, stay with me. I want to play you a clip of the statement made by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu last night in his address to the nation.
All of the places which Hamas is deployed in, hiding in, and operating from, that wicked city, we will turn them into rubble. I say to the residents of Gaza, leave now, because we will operate forcefully everywhere.
That clip, by the way, is from Benjamin Netanyahu's official website. Those English subtitles are from the Israeli government. Is the Israeli Prime Minister really telling all the residents of Gaza to leave? That's 2.3 million people. I don't speak on behalf of the Prime Minister. What I can talk about is what the IDF has done, what the IDF is doing. And again, the focus right now is first and foremost on securing our borders following an invasion. That is our focus as of now. What could potentially happen down the road, other types of scenarios, we're not there yet. But of course, again, in contrast to what we've been seeing, there was no attempt to target civilians in any way within the Gaza Strip. It's not something that we have ever done in the past, but certainly Hamas has to understand that when they invade a country, when they take hostages, when they slaughter women and children and the elderly on the streets, there will be a response. And I think that any reasonable person living in any